Hello, everybody. Welcome to the platform. My name is Conrad Sokolowski, and we have Tom Baker here. And this is going to be our introduction video. And what I'd like to do with Tom is spend a few minutes and talk about why we're starting the platform. What is the purpose? What are our intentions? And then we'll get into a few topics of discussion. Try to keep this around 30 minutes for the introduction. So, getting into it right away, speaking for myself, the platform to me is going to be a place, a channel, maybe even a podcast where we can get a group of people, whether it's just me and Tom or guests, and then whoever else who may come later in the future, getting together and talking about some issues such as consciousness and issues that go a little bit deeper than just your superficial talk out there. And the purpose for me on a deeper level is to have a clear and sound mind, dig into deeper truths, and to know what truth is, to talk about beliefs. And one of the words that you'll probably hear me use a lot is being whole. And I'll explain what I think that is, what that means to me later. But being whole, being of sound mind, and always be searching for truth. And just to let you know that we have a big fire roaring right here in front of us, and this is probably going to be play a key part in our future videos and discussions. Right now, we're just going to do audio recording, and then probably, who knows, maybe in a few weeks or in a month, we're going to do some. We're going to have some cameras rolling too, but we think that right now audio will suffice. So I'm going to pass the mic to Tom, and Tom's going to go ahead and give you his intro and why he's doing the platform, and maybe even a little bit of background as to how this started, and we'll get the ball rolling. So here's Tom Baker.
Hey guys, before I forget, Conrad, one of the things that I'd want you to discuss is the kind of the layout or formula or whatever that we're going to use. Like, explain how how we're going to set, like how the flow of our conversation will go. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm going to be honest here. We already recorded two other videos, and I didn't think I was going to say this, but we did record an intro video, but it got axed in editing, so we have to redo it. But so far, the way it's been working is we generally start with a topic. Like, for example, it can be, let's talk about feeling. What is feeling? Why do we feel? And then that'll eventually just lead into other topics. And this isn't supposed to be a fast pace, try to keep you on the edge of your seat with fast talk or joke telling, or try to be very entertaining. We're really just doing this to have deep discussion and to have meaning in our lives, things that we care about, and again, to be whole and sound minded. So we don't think this necessarily has to be a extremely edgy, fast pace, and to keep your attention. I mean, this is really just to have a simple conversation. One of the videos I think ran over a couple hours, or not video, but the audio went for a couple hours the other day. Me and Tom were talking, and that's just how it's going to be for now. And if the stuff that we say, if it applies to you, then great. If not, then great. There's a lot of other avenues, other channels, and other different forms of wisdom and knowledge, and other platforms where a couple of people are just talking about things that it may interest you. But again, this is a platform so that we can talk about topics that you typically don't talk about on a daily basis, either because it's just too much or too reflective, too introspective, right? So we feel this is a necessity for us right now in our lives, and we'll talk about how we got to where we are. And again, we're just a couple of regular people. We're not scholars. We're not academics. We're just two. Right now, me and Tom, two just average guys who sort of found our way to get us through some hard times, and we want to share it, and we want to bring guests who can share their insight as well, and we think that's vital for quality of living. And so, you asked about the structure of the show, so, or the structure of this. Does that pretty much answer it? Okay.
Yeah, I just didn't want to get into it without the viewers understanding that this isn't scripted, this isn't premeditated. It will be more premeditated once we research very specific topics, but right now it's kind of off the cusp, talking about things that are important to us and relevant in our lives, and we think that they are going to be relevant to our viewers, our listeners. So anyway, like Conrad said, my name is Tom Baker, 35, and we're filming in Columbus, Ohio. And the reason that I'm doing the platform, that I'm involved, is because it's natural for Conrad and I to have these conversations, or these type of conversations in general. When Conrad and I get together, on most occasions, we will sit down and talk about things that are deeper, or as he said, not superficial. And for me, that is, it's super beneficial. It helps me grow, helps me gain perspective that I wouldn't necessarily have had going into it. And it's rewarding, it's fulfilling, and I think, as Con and I have been talking about this more and more in months past, this idea that it seems like these kind of conversations aren't your water cooler conversations. Like these deeper conversations don't seem to happen in, at least in the circles that I'm in, as often. And we feel like they should. Like, why aren't people asking more difficult questions? And why are people seemingly, at least at face value, more depressed now than they were, 30, 40, 50 years ago? And maybe that's, not accurate, but at least from my point of view, it is. And so we wanted to, both of us are on individual, independent paths and journeys in our own lives, and both of them seem to be running parallel and interconnecting with the people that we're listening to and being influenced to or influenced by. And so anything that we can talk about and record and potentially benefit somebody else is worthwhile.
Yeah, the platform's a great place to sit and talk about these topics, because when you're out in the grocery store or walking around and you see your friends in public, or you're hanging out with your friends, it's hard, maybe for some, to bring up heavier topics. Maybe some of you are going through hard times and you want to know why, why don't I just blow my head off? What's the point of carrying on? And a lot of this stems through hard times, getting through hard times, and facing hard times and getting through them. And I think that's why we're doing this, so that we could share with each other, and also with those who feel that they need this type of talk in their lives. Maybe they're searching for something. Maybe you're searching for something, and we're always searching. So we don't feel like we're not above anything at all. It's just a matter of, hey, let's sit down and talk, because talking about these things in itself is what helps us get through hard times and through things that we don't understand. We want to understand more about. And so there's gonna be a lot of research. We're gonna like to bring on some guests and just talk about some interesting things, because sometimes life can get a little mundane, and maybe you reach a point in your life where you say, gosh, what is the point? Why am I here? And why do I do what do I do? And what's the purpose? And just, all the tough ones. And so we want to talk about those. And if you're interested and want to sit through it, then awesome. That's why we're recording this, because we could be having these conversations right now without recording and we'd be fine. It's that we've both started to feel the need. It's like, hey, maybe we could share some of this, because who knows, maybe this will resonate with some people out there. And so yeah, so that's a good little intro, and then I think we're going to jump into a couple topics, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I got a question for you. You kind of hit on this, but what does the platform mean? The name the platform mean to you? And real quickly, I just want to share something that I wrote down as far as like a concise version of what I think the platform is. It's to provide a platform or resource where the average person can go in hopes of becoming healthy and whole as it pertains to the mind, body, and soul. And so I think all of our topics will be encompassed in that, to be healthy and whole as it pertains to mind, body, and soul. But anyway, did you want to touch on at all the platform and what it means, or do you want to just dive into?
Yeah, I can quickly jump into that real quick. When we decided we wanted to do a YouTube channel, I mean, we thought YouTube would be fine. We were thinking about a name. What's our purpose? What's our intentions here? And Tom, as a matter of fact, kept referring to, by just default, the platform. Hey, what do you want to call the platform? And that just kind of seemed natural. And so we just went with that. The platform, really, it's almost just kind of like a blank slate, a place. The name just represents a place where we can just talk and have conversations about anything that matters, as far as being a complete whole individual, or at least seeking that for yourself. And I think that there's a variety of topics we can talk about, but it all just kind of comes down to that. I mean, we're not going to sit here and talk about, I don't know, how to build a fire, because
maybe.
Who knows, maybe. But I mean, we need to talk about things that just matter, that have to hit home and resonate with the soul, and keeping things in line. So anyway, yeah, that's where the name comes from, and that's our aim here.
All right, so I got a question for you to start this off. Being self-conscious, being aware of your surroundings, and thinking that people are always watching you, when you're out in public, to operate, whether it's subconsciously or consciously, under the mindset that somebody is always watching. How
you mean just like a person?
Yeah. So just for example, to give you some context, you may, if you have a booger in your nose, you may wait for the most opportune time to pick it, to stick your finger up your nose and wedge that bad boy out. When you're driving, you may look behind you, look at across the street and see if anybody's looking. Now you take that. I mean, that is just one prime example that everybody goes through. But take that further, and when you're at the mall, maybe you stumble and you're like worried about people seeing you. Like, how does being self-conscious affect you? And was there any other things that we like? How did we articulate it the first time we recorded this? Because
being objective or observer of yourself. Right.
Yeah. But yeah.
Well, I have a couple of things on my phone here, notes that I wrote down a long time ago. Hold on. I had a note that I wrote down on my phone a while ago. One of the psychological terms was called the spotlight. Check 1 2. Okay, I think the battery went out a little bit, but so the spotlight effect. Here, grab this real quick and I'll...
Yeah, grab your phone. Right. Yeah, I'm super interested in this idea of always operating under the assumption, and maybe you don't do this, maybe our viewers don't do this, but always operating under the assumption that somebody is watching you. But anyway, the spotlight effect.
Okay, so the spotlight effect, going with what you're saying, spotlight effect. The spotlight effect is the phenomenon in which people tend to believe they are being noticed more than they really are, being that one is constantly in the center of one's own world. An accurate evaluation of how much one is noticed by others has shown to be uncommon. The reason behind the spotlight effect comes from the innate tendency to forget that although one is the center of one's own world, one is not the center of everyone else's. This tendency is especially prominent when one does something atypical. So yeah, it's the whole idea behind it is that you believe that you are always being watched in the public eye, and you are constantly aware of that. And so, and where do we go with that?
Well, one of the things that you had brought up last time was to be an objective viewer of yourself. And so here's this picture that we painted that I thought was ingenious, is that when you are operating every day, in real time, there are 3 viewers of your actions, right? Is that what we said? There is you viewing the situation as it happens.
Yeah, in the first person.
Yeah. And then you have this person on your right shoulder telling you how other people are viewing you as you're doing this, as you're operating.
Yeah.
And then on your left shoulder, you have somebody telling you how what the right person and left person, or how you and the person on your right see it.
Mm-hmm. So you have the first person viewer. Okay, let's just take the whole mall thing again, right? So you're walking through the mall. It's just a public area. It's an easy to go to because we're all familiar with the mall. So you're walking through the mall and you are in your own skin. So you are conscious of the world around you. And then the second would be,
well, let's say you trip.
Yeah, so you trip, and then, well, hold on a second. Let's not get into that yet. You're walking, and then what you're doing, that's the first person. So the person who lives in that the first person world the best are kids, because they're the ones who, they don't really have that objective observer yet. They're living in what you say is like living in the moment, complete in the moment. They're just being them, and that's it, and they're just enjoying what they see, and it's really no different than how maybe an animal would live. They just see the world in the first person, and that's it. And then the objective, the second degree of that is you being aware of others being aware of you. So then now you have that second person watching you, right? So you have you, first person, then you have you being aware of yourself. So that'd be, let's just say that's second person, right? Mm-hmm. And then the third person would be the one aware that's watching you. And so
the third person is the objective viewer of yourself, right?
The viewer that's viewing you.
The objective viewer of yourself. So your view of how you view yourself in light of what you perceive and what the second person perceives. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I mean, it's this idea that you understand that you're acting in a certain way because you think that other people are watching you, but you realize, if you have an objective view of yourself, you realize that nobody really is watching you.
Right, yeah.
And that you don't matter as much as you think you do, is, mm-hmm. in their eyes.
Yeah. And so the reason why we started talking about that prior is because it's one thing that we definitely resonated on. It's a taxing thing to be always self-aware in in the minds of others, but not in a positive way. I mean, I would. There is a positive, but the negative is constantly doing things because you think that the world is watching, and that's why you do. That's why you behave the way you behave. So you're constantly removed from being in the present moment, and as we know now, there's so many different teachers who talk about living in the present and how important it is to live in the present, and so I think that's good to a certain degrees, but it's quite impossible to live always in the present. We're constantly projecting in the future. We're constantly thinking what others think about us, and we're constantly reflecting on the past. So it's pretty much it's doable, but it's not sustainable for long periods of time, but for a good reason. But we had mentioned this in our first introduction, and so we're trying to revisit it. But yeah, so we were able to identify a lot of different reasons why having that spotlight effect is a very negative, can be very negative.
Well,
So we wanted to address it, and then being aware of it.
it's sort of like this. It's like children. I don't know if we talked about this in the first session or not, but regardless, when you see children, like how, as you were speaking, I was trying to think, how does this affect me? How does being self-conscious affect me personally? What are some things that we could talk about that's a negative effect, and how can we overcome it? And one of the first things that comes to my mind is how we as a society hardly ever talk to people in our proximity while we're waiting in line for something. Like if I'm at Chipotle, or if I'm at the grocery store, or the DMV or whatever, there's long lines. If I look up, and I'm guilty of this myself, it's everybody staring in their screens. Everybody is in their own world, doing their own thing, and nobody talks to each other. Now, if I have, like, I was eating the other day at a restaurant with my kids, and my 7-year-old daughter was present at the time, and the table beside us, there was a table full of 4 kids, because their parents were sitting at a separate table celebrating something. And Chloe, my daughter, 7 years old, turns around, mid-meal, and just starts talking to this other girl that's at this other table, and they quickly become friends, And it's like they're just not self-conscious at all. Like they don't care how other kids view them necessarily. And don't get me wrong, we're not being self-conscious isn't all bad, right? There are some good things, because some things are inappropriate to do. Some things you should be ashamed to do, or shy away from doing in the public's eye, etc. But just taking the getting out of our comfort zone and talking to other people, or becoming friendly, or having conversations with strangers, that is, in my opinion, that is one huge factor that affects me. And I'm very outgoing. I try to talk to people all the time, but it still affects me. It's like, how am I going to come across? Am I going to offend anybody? Am I going to look like an idiot? Is this person even interested in talking right now, or do they just want to stare at their phone? And it all boils down to being self-conscious. And so that is one thing that I think stems from being self-conscious and has a negative effect on us. Is there anything that you could attest to that it affects you personally, Conrad?
Yeah, I think when you're talking about your kids, you do see that the kids are just extremely they're unashamed. They just don't have any bias yet. They're not programmed, right? So they're just themselves, and that's it. there's no judgment. So that's something that we definitely learn, and we are programmed over time. And the problem with it is that most of it's just subconscious. It's when you, I mean, think about the years of programming that we endure growing up. Going to the movies, there's a big one, right? How the media portrays people, how we are constantly being reminded of how inadequate we are. And so we're constantly playing the comparison game. And when we don't resonate, or we can't, what's the word I'm looking for? Relate to what we see, if we feel underneath it or above it, then we start to develop a bias. We start to become programmed. So if I'm hanging out with my friends and family, and I see somebody else hanging out and they're of a certain type that I was programmed to look down on, then that's programming. That's your subconscious mind taking over. And but the worst kind is self-inflicted feelings of shame or inadequacy, not feeling like you have anything to offer. And that's the thing. When you're out in public, waiting in a line, and you're standing there there's a couple people behind you, a couple people in front of you that you could easily have a conversation with, but you don't, because maybe you feel like, well, what can I say that they would even care about? What do I have to offer? And maybe I'm just bothering them. And so we go through all these thoughts, negative thoughts, but very quickly. It's you cycle through these thoughts in a matter of microseconds. And so we'd rather just shut up and stare at our phones and not partake. And that's not, of course, everybody, but it seems like it's quite a bit of people, quite a few people, and especially depending on where you are.
Well, let me say this to try to wrap it up and to button it up with a nice conclusive thought. I'll ask this, but I also have something to say. What are some ways? Okay, we're prescribing that to some degree, that a lot of people self-conscious hinders them in certain ways. So that's what we're saying to some degree. Like, hey, do you recognize this? And if so, in what area of your life? And then, so what can we say, or how can we get over it? And I think we can get over it by being aware of the objective viewer. So like, that's my question to you, is what are some things that we can do to become the objective viewer of ourselves? But first, to be transparent, another way that this affects me greatly, if I'm being honest and transparent, is the way I look, right? So when I get dressed every day, I don't know how you are. I mean, some people probably don't struggle with this at all, but because I'm super self-conscious, when I get dressed to go out, I may put on 3 or 4 different combinations of things. Like, this is just me, walking through my day and getting ready. But if I have like a certain, I'll pick out a certain article of clothing that I'm dead set on wearing, right? So if I'm like, hey, I want to wear those shoes, then it's a matter of, okay, which pants and which shirt are going to go best with those shoes right now? If I say, hey, I'm going to wear those pants, then it's a matter of which pants and which shirt are going to go with it. And then if I say, hey, yeah. And then if I say, hey, I'm going to wear this shirt, then it's a matter of, okay, well, what pants and what shoes are going to go with it? And don't get me wrong, like, I'm not like so conceited or so self-absorbed or so self-conscious that it takes me more than 5 minutes to decide. I'm just saying that I actually do think, and I'll put on, like today, for example, it took me 2 minutes to put on my pants, my shirt, and my shoes. And it took me another 2 minutes to find out what jacket I was going to wear because of how cold it was, but also because, I have 3 or 4 different colors. And I was like, which one goes best? I I know. Here's the thing. This just happened today. I wasn't thinking about this podcast when I was getting dressed. I wasn't thinking about how I was going to use this. But even today, I became the objective viewer and I was like, you know what? I could wear. I said, I didn't say this out loud or anything, but I was like thinking to myself, I could wear any one of these 4 jackets and it would be fine. Nobody's going to care. Nobody cares. But I still wanted to find the right one. And that hinders me. It doesn't cripple me. I think some people that does cripple them. Like they can't walk out of the house unless they're on 9s and 10s, looking. Like for me, I try to not care as much and just I'll wear black and brown. And my older daughter, she's almost 17, she'll be like, Dad, that doesn't match or whatever. And there are a lot of times where I'm like, I don't care, I like it. Like I like the way it looks. I'm not dressing for other people. But then there are some times where I subconsciously or self-consciously am dressing for other people. And it's like, man, why am I doing that? Why am I dressing for other people and not just for myself?
Yeah.
And so that is one, I think, very practical way where it hinders me personally and probably a lot of other people. And I think the raw truth is your viewers are not being that critical.
Yeah.
Especially the ones that you really want to please.
Yeah. I would say 2 things. Number 1, you dress because
you don't want to be naked.
You dress because you don't want to. Well, number 1, you dress for yourself. That's one. If you feel good inside, then you're probably naturally going to want to just dress nice and feel good. You just go out and have nice clean clothes and it be nice fitting and whatnot, because you feel good as a person, and so that just naturally just reflects on the outside as well. I mean, today when we were at that restaurant, there was a gentleman sitting next to me, and he was just dressed just really. I mean, he even had like stains all over his shirt, and my initial instinct was, oh, this person is a slob and that they don't care. Now, that's my initial reaction, and then. See, now that's the important of having an objective perspective, because you have to be able to stop and ask yourself these things. See, that's the first key, because earlier you were asking like, well, how do you start being the objective observer, right? Right?
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. It's first you start living this life and you react to and about the whole clothes thing. Number 1, it's either how you feel good, so you dress good, or you're trying to dress good just because you want to impress people, and then that's all you care about, and that's obviously a screwed up way of thinking too, because you're constantly worried about what other people think, and that's not healthy either. But being you start living your life. You go through your adolescent years and you get into teenage years and whatever, and you just live life. You naturally react to everything, and that's just how you are. You develop a personality, likes, habits, and dislikes, and whatever else, and that's just who you are. And then eventually you get through a good chunk of your life, and you stop and you think, and maybe some do, some don't, where you say, geez, why am I the way I am? Like, why are things the way they are? And if you have any desire whatsoever to make any kind of changes in your life, you'd like to see some changes, well, that's one of the first things you do, is you become aware of who you are. You pay attention to, you react to things, and then you pay attention to how you react and say, why did I react in that way? And that for me personally was some of the first beginning steps into getting to know myself a little better and understand why I do the things I do. I am the way I am. And it's only if you stop and analyze your life and you start to think, why are why are things the way they are? And what am I? I'm a human being. Why am I a human being? And then you have all these questions, and so that's really fun. That's really a fun way. That's really fun to start doing, is when you start not just going through life reacting to everything, and that's just it, but reacting to things, and then thinking to yourself, why did I react that way?
Yeah.
Why am I that kind of person?
Mm-hmm.
And then you start to realize, oh, wait a minute, it's all because of subconscious programming. Oh, wait a minute, I am a robot in a certain sense. Let me figure out why, and so on and so forth.
That's all I've got.
Yeah. Well, listen, that was just a little introduction. Again, man, this is going to be very laid back, at least starting out. We are not trying to
Change the world.
We're not trying to be all bells and whistles and trying to make this super entertaining for you. Again, this isn't one of those hip YouTube channels that, is trying to get some views for advertising or just to gain a big following. Honestly, guys, we're doing this for ourselves, and if it does something for you, or you think it will at least, then that's who we want the audience to be, and we're gonna keep doing it. So bear with us or don't. But thanks for listening so far. Any last words you want to say, Tom?
Yeah, just to recap on what we just spoke about. I think one of the biggest things that you said that resonates with me is asking the difficult question, why am I the way I am? Right? Like, that is at the heart of why I am doing this podcast. That's at the heart of where I am in my life right now, is why am I this way, and why do I see, and I didn't make the observation that you did today, but why do I'm speaking for you, or, why do I see the person next to me in these clothes and automatically make that judgment? I never even factored in that maybe he's having a hard day, or
maybe he doesn't care.
Maybe
he's like, I don't care.
Maybe his house just burned down with all his clothes, and you have no idea why somebody is going through what they're going through, and I think the difference is taking the time, the split second, to ask yourself, wait, let me catch myself. Why did I make that judgment?
Yeah.
And is it accurate? What's it based on? And then that helps you once you become trained in that, that helps you become an objective viewer of yourself, when you realize, like, hey, I don't need to worry about what other people think of me or how they perceive me, because I'm content with being who I am, because I know why I am the way I am, and I know who I am.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, thanks for listening. That was our introduction for the platform. We're starting to upload these soon. We already have the introduction. We have a second and third video coming out. There, it's already made, or not video, but audio. And like I said, we're going to start doing video probably a couple weeks to a month. Yeah, go ahead.
And real quick, just so you guys know, the video, one of the main benefits of the video is so that we can have illustrations or content for viewers to see.
Presentations.
Yeah,
like a digital projector or something. But we're going to have guests on here. We're going to have a lot of references. We're excited about it. But,
and if you got topics, shoot them in the comment section.
Yeah. Okay, well, thanks for listening again. Video 2 and 3 are coming out. We already got them. I'm sorry, again, not video, but audio. And we're going to keep doing it. So welcome to the platform. Thanks. See ya.